there is a massive disconnect because the youth don't feel represented by these leaders because um, they have not catered to their aspirations at all. And as you rightly pointed out, also about the Bhutanese refugee scandals, there is this questioning, right? When a leader is willing to sell or willing to perpetrate an act like that by, masquerading Nepali nationals as Bhutanese refugees and making a buck from that particular process, especially when it's the home minister or the associated with the top leaders, then people start to question.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. I'm Kate Kiangre and you're watching The Gist. There's so much happening in our immediate neighborhood, and today's discussion is all about that. And joining me for more on that is Nepal's strategic analyst and security expert, Chiran Thapa. Thank you so much for your time. I want to first start by asking you about the present, because the protests have happened. 19 people, at least 19 people, have lost their lives. But the process now is what next? And I want to start by asking you about that.
Thank you so much to StratNewsGlobal. Let me actually begin by with a disclaimer. I don't represent any groups or organizations, so I stand here as an independent Nepali national, just to express some of my personal views. Second, of course, as you know, we grieve and we mourn for all the losses that has happened in the last couple of days. Nepal has lost a lot in terms of human lives, in terms of property. There's been massive destruction. So, I think the nation is in complete grief and shock. There's a lot of sadness, but there's also a lot of trepidation in terms of the uncertainty that lies ahead, in terms of what now, right? So, at this point, there hasn't been a new government that has been announced. Mediation is underway between the army, the president, and the new forces, those that represent Gen Z. There has been no announcement of a new government yet. So I think we're still in that vacuum where we don't have a parliament. We don't know whether the parliament exists. Constitution remains a question mark in terms of how it is accepted in this new environment. Then there are all these old forces, and there are the new forces in terms of how everyone is going to be accommodated, right? There's also been massive destruction in terms of the economics. It's at a epic scale. So it's like lightning that hit us. It's like it's all this beloved. We used to call it the zone of peace is now looks like a war zone. So. Uncertainty prevails. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anger as well. So it's a mix. It's an eclectic mix of all these emotions and that. But I think underneath all of it, there's this level of uncertainty that prevails amongst all those residing within Nepal, but also amongst the diaspora community. Which is keenly watching. All the sleepless nights they've had, calling their families, calling their friends, saying what's going to happen. So monitoring from all over the world.
You talked about the diaspora and the concerns within the diaspora. Now, some of the statistics when it comes to the diaspora also is something that do stand out. Now, 33% of Nepal's GDP is from personal remittances. And that speaks a lot to also the kind of lack of opportunities perhaps that the youth feels within the country as well.
Yes. Economically, I think our economy is very heavily reliant on remittances. Um, and that will probably it will further impact the economy again because the economy has taken a massive hit. A lot of these employment centers have been destroyed. For example, Bhatbhatini Superstore, which was one of the largest employers in Nepal, many of the stores have been burnt down. So, which means that thousands of jobs have been lost almost instantly. So, Bhatbhatini is not just an employment center, but it's also a supply chain. So, there are a lot of these vendors that have goods and services that they use Bhatvatini to sell to the consumer, right? So that complete supply chain has been hit quite badly. Chaudhary Group, one of the largest employers, has also been hit. His house, I think, was ransacked and torched. So now what has happened is the investor confidence has plummeted. The industrialist confidence has also plummeted. The Marwari Seva Samiti building, I believe, was also torched. Marwadis are known to be, in the business. They're the business community, so they are also now, their confidence has been shaken, I guess, to a great extent. So we don't know how this is going to unravel, but in the short and medium term, our economy is going to be hit quite massively. But another part of that is now there are news that are coming out uh, in these fires, in some of these houses of political leaders, millions and billions of rupees were found, and they were all burned. So um, there's a speculation that a significant portion of the economy has been hit because that cash has now disappeared. Uh, Now, because of unemployment, now there's going to be this vicious cycle of people again being compelled to go abroad because there are going to be lesser opportunities, right? There's going to be less industrialists opening businesses. The businesses there may be a lot of capital flight. So in the short run, in the medium run, our economy is definitely going to take a hit. But I think in the longer run, given the resilience of Nepal, the resilience of the Nepalese economy, we're going to rise like the phoenix. I always say we're going to rise like the phoenix from the ashes. Because one thing, if I may remind to your viewers, is Nepal is one of those countries that has endured almost every single crisis in the last 30 years, right? We've gone from a violent conflict. We went to a constitutional limbo. There was a constitutional crisis. Then again, we were hit by a massive earthquake in 2015. You saw that. Everybody, the world witnessed it. Then immediately after that, we were struck with another blockade, a menacing blockade that stopped all our supplies. Immediately after that, there was COVID, right? So we have endured almost every single crisis imaginable. There were massive floods last year, which inundated the entire valley. So Nepalese, we've gone through this over and over again, and the the greatest strength in the Nepalese society is the resilience. It's the resilience and tolerance that makes us so unique, and our ability to sort of come back and rise up very quickly again. The thing that provides a lot of hope and inspiration is the fact that after all the burnings in the streets, what you can see the very next day, all all the people, young, old, are going cleaning their vicinities, their neighborhoods, doing neighborhood watch together. So everyone's coming together because there is a realization that this is a country that belongs to all of us, and we have to do something to protect and preserve whatever makes us unique, the national identity. So I have a lot of hope that we will come back stronger and better.
You said, that you are confident that Nepal will rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Nepal, like you said, has not just endured a lot of natural disasters, but has also gone through cyclical unrest and political unrest as well. And if you could talk to us a little bit about the power centers, how the power centers were seen by people, and how that also fueled some of the anger that you saw in the form of the protests that we saw on Monday particularly. And then I also want to talk to you a little bit about the social media ban and whether that was literally just the last match that lit this huge fire, or whether that was like a really big pivoting moment.
Yes, in a nutshell, I think the way I want to describe the Nepali context had already become a pressure cooker because of the grievances and the resentment that uh, that was basically fueled by impunity, injustice, a lot of corruption, the level of apathy from the political ruling class. So the society has already become a pressure cooker. But so that society had to let off that steam in one way or the other. We didn't know whether it was going to come tomorrow, today, or in 2 years. So the context was very combustible. It, and I think the political ruling class failed to recognize that. Second, in terms of the trigger, I think, as you rightly pointed out, the social media ban turned out to be the trigger. Um, After the ban, I think everyone was impacted because democracy is not about just physical spaces and freedom of expression. It's also about digital democracy, right? Your ability to sort of access information, to communicate, to express oneself and get that information. I think that has become quite vital. But also the fact that the Nepali society had also witnessed some of these major unrest in the region. So we had already taken lessons from it. We saw Sri Lanka, we saw Bangladesh, we saw many other uprisings, and Indonesia is already undergoing the same thing right before us. So the Nepalese were attuned to all of this. They were witnesses to all of this, and they were already taking lessons from it. So one of the things that was very conspicuous in the social media platforms was this level of anger, the frustration that the same thing needs to happen here, that we need to do the same here, we need to kick out all these corrupt politicians. So that anger was already there. And as a result of the social media ban, there were protests, and during the protests, the state used excessive. I mean, the force was not disproportionate; it was excessive. It was manslaughter at an epic scale because we had not witnessed anything like this before. Even during the uprisings in 2006, I think only 19 people were killed in 19 days or something like that. Even before that, the amount of losses were not as high as on a one-day basis. I think we've lost almost about 30 to 40 people in one day, and most of them were school children. So this ignited the societal fury, and basically the outburst was what we witnessed on that day.
You talked about seeing uprising in the neighborhood. So, was it really that Nepal was waiting for its time in a way?
I believe so because I think the context was already very combustible. It was not against a political system, but it was against a political class that remained very apathetic, very ignorant, and there was a clear disconnect between the aspirations of the people, the education of the people, and the ruling class. For example, I mean, you have a very educated, very sophisticated, emerging generation, very tech savvy, very attuned to what is happening all over the world with the mobile phone generation. So they've seen the world through these platforms in terms of what it looks like, what's happening around the world, and a lot of them have actually returned from abroad with many years of experience. So they'd seen this. Now the ruling class, I mean, the prime minister, I believe, was an eighth grader. The finance minister was an eighth grader. The education minister was an eighth grader. That's what I've heard. I've not looked into their educational background, but there's clearly a disconnect. So the society is getting more educated, whereas you have these older men who are uneducated but come from a very long political background, ruling or governing the state. So there was already this mismatch. But also the level of corruption, the level of impunity with which they operated. One incident that occurred very the day before this incident was there was one particular minister that ran over a girl and basically fled. I think that also served to fuel the fan the flames because the response from the state was basically. These are minor accidents, it happens. So that level of apathy, that level of just brushing aside such an issue had already fueled that level of anger on social media platforms as well as countrywide. So all of these things came together, and the eruption happened, and it basically
On the one hand,
You,
like you said, there was this accident where a lot of people identified with what happened to the person who was the victim. That if this is the level of apathy we're going to get from the people who are supposed to serve us, then what is our future really, on the one hand? And then there was the other aspect that really played into that as well, which is the Nepo babies. That here are all these children of political families who are doing really well. All their Instagram or TikTok videos and photos are all about luxury, super luxury holidays. And that mismatch also played a huge part in just the anger being channeled out.
yes, and in this, if I may just use exactly what you said to further make a point, is the digital platforms are a, you know an it's an instrument that's been used by almost everyone in Nepal, right? So social media is a platform that's used for mobilization, that's used for communication, that's used for expression of your personal expression, right? Sharing of information. So everything is the digital platform. So when that digital platform is the access to those digital platforms are curbed, it really had a massive impact on almost every single person in the country, right? So, as you rightly pointed out, those pictures that were shared by the Nepo kids, of course, were used to, you know, it was widely shared amongst the Nepalese living inside the country and outside the country. So that was also a major reason why this eruption happened, because it enabled that. I think it fueled it, it enabled it, um, and hopefully that will also serve as a healer of some sorts. And because there's a lot of disinformation that's also being propagated, right? So there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation that's being propagated, which is quite detrimental. We need to be wary of that. But it's also a platform where people are sharing their emotions, their angers, hope, for example, is being shared, and there's a lot of learning also taking place. People are also healing because of this. During the earthquake, one of the biggest healers was all these digital platforms where people were sharing jokes, people were sharing technical skills, saying I have this technical skill, how can I sell it, or I have this product that I have access to. So it's a marketplace of all sorts. So hopefully, the digital platform that has now been resumed will also enable us to get back together, heal, and come back together as a country much stronger and better.
Okay. What about this question that does get asked often when uprisings take place? Was there a foreign hand?
Well, those are issues that will always be played in every single context, no matter where it is, right? It is very difficult to basically pinpoint and justify and validate those claims, because you need evidence to corroborate your claims. But like you mentioned, there's definitely a lot of speculation. There's a lot of hy- hypothesis, a lot of conspiracy theories that are swirling all across Nepal and all over the world, saying like there was a foreign hand, or there were foreign hands, like either one or the other that instigated it. But I personally don't actually subscribe to that view. There may be a larger scheme at play, very difficult, but it would be you would be discrediting and dishonoring the lives lost, the people that actually stood up for something. If you try to stray away from their contribution or their anger or their sort of frustrations that were actually vented, because what triggered it was, of course, the death of innocent school going children, like, that were massacred, right? So that basically was the trigger. But it was also the combustible context created by our Nepali actors, correct? In terms of the impunity, in terms of corruption, in terms of apathy. So all of these things was the bedrock. I mean, the combustible fuel was already there. But you cannot deny the fact that there will be certain vested interests that will, of course, play in these murky waters. You cannot deny that. Could have certainly happened.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the future of Nepal. in the sense that, like you said, the leaders are from an older time, an older generation, and many of them, actually have risen through the ranks. They've gone to jail, they have, been at guerrilla warfare, then they've come into mainstream politics, so they have that, heft politically in the background, but they also have tons of corruption allegations against them, charges from everything related to aircraft related corruption to even having Nepalese be pretending to be Bhutanese. There's a huge disconnect that the youth feels so strongly about the leaders who are in power but don't actually represent them or their dreams.
So the situation is, as you rightly pointed out, there is a massive disconnect because the youth don't feel represented by these leaders because um, they have not catered to their aspirations at all. And as you rightly pointed out, also about the Bhutanese refugee scandals, there is this questioning, right? When a leader is willing to sell or willing to perpetrate an act like that by, masquerading Nepali nationals as Bhutanese refugees and making a buck from that particular process, especially when it's the home minister or the associated with the top leaders, then people start to question. But now, if you look at the situation which is underway in Nepal, the same young generation are unable to find representatives amongst them that can lead the country. So the mayor of Kathmandu was actually proposed, but I think he refused or he declined. And now we're seeing the former Chief Justice, Sushila Karki, from what I read, is the next candidate. And she's about 74 years old, right? So now the cycle has come back to the same old people, although she was not affiliated with any political party. But from an age point of view, they're again seeking more experienced, more untainted individuals, at least for the interim. In the future, I don't know how this will play out, but I feel that the resolution to this, a long-term resolution to this, is a national reconciliation, because there are, as you rightly pointed out, there are multiple forces in the country. The old parties represent a force. They have very organized organizations, sister organizations, fraternity organizations, all the way at the grassroots level. There is the force that basically led this uprising, right? This thing called the Zenzi. So they represent a force right now. But there are also some traditional forces like the monarchist who are also a force to be reckoned with. So at this time, there are multiple forces, existing in the country. Um, so the way forward, I think, is national reconciliation and national unity. I don't know how that's going to be achieved, but that's the only recipe forward, is to accommodate and not to exclude political forces, relevant political stakeholders, because ultimately, if you exclude, then you create a grievance in that, and the grievance is going to go into dissent, and possibly what we saw today again. So if we want to avoid that relapse, we have to somehow accommodate all of these forces. Second, I think there also has to be a massive police reform. From as a security analyst, from what we witnessed, that level of shooting is just unprecedented. It's just horrific. Uh, there are protocols when during crowd control. There are protocols, right? I mean, in terms of, you try to create barricades, you try to disperse them using water cannons, rubber bullets below the knee, uh, you know firing in the air. All of that seems to have just gone out the window. That just targeted straight up. And even the weapons that were used, these are long weapons. They're not like pistols. So we really now need to think about how we can improve policing. Um, what else? I think
Also, the role of the army, because currently that's also something that is being spoken of, and there is, the army chief is saying one thing, the president wants another.
One of the things that I want to highlight about the army has always been our crisis manager in every single crisis, right? Whether it be COVID, whether it be earthquake, whether it be even the peace process. The peace process would not have, resulted in this kind of peaceful outcome had it not been for the army's sort of professionalism. Because if you look at it in every process around the world, this is one of the most unique peace processes whereby there's not even a single bullet fired after the peace accord was signed between the two protagonists, right? The second is also the experience that it has obtained or acquired through peacekeeping. Nepal Army is the number one peacekeeping contributor in the world. So what you saw in the immediate aftermath of this violent, episode is the level of restraint that the army exercised. Not one single bullet was fired in the entire episode from the army's guns, right? Because they had seen places like Haiti, they had experienced Liberia, they had experienced Chad, and all of that. So that basically provided them that level of experience and that level of professionalism to deal with something like this. Also, there was one survey that was conducted several months ago by an independent think tank, or whereby the army's public approval rating, was the highest amongst all stakeholders, above 90%, which is quite rare, right? So army, I think, will remain as a backbone and will serve as an enabler and a stabilizing force, because the army remains still unaffiliated with any political force. It doesn't have a stake in any of these political factions or political forces. So it will remain as a national force, and they will have to remain as a national force at least for the immediate aftermath, for number of months, as a stabilizing force. Because without it, our public security system has collapsed. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's looting has taken place quite a lot. Arson. There could be retribution, reprisal attacks. So all of this will require our army's very proactive and enabling role to bring the society back to normality. And I think the army is doing that in the best way it can, because compared, people are asking me, is it going to be in Bangladesh or Pakistan or anywhere, whether there's going to be a coup? There's been no history there's been no instance in Nepal's history where the army has actually come and intervened and taken over. The army has always enabled, facilitated the civilian government to the extent that they have sort of stuck to the constitution, I think, to the maximum extent possible. So the army will be the stabilizing force, irrespective of whoever takes power, whoever is in the governing seat, the backbone that will keep that particular government in place and will enable whatever changes they want to enact through the support of the army.
While you speak of the army as being the backbone and the enabler of whatever system that Nepal chooses to go forward with, one question that keeps popping up constantly is about the monarch. We saw a few months ago protests, many people participating, saying they want to end democracy, bring monarchy back. And we've also seen the king talk about, he's willing to take up the cudgels. So how do you see that? Is it just opportunism at this time, or is he really a serious contender to coming back into the mainstream?
The best way to describe that, as I said, he is a relevant stakeholder. These are traditional forces, in terms of the forces that actually want a return to the monarchy. The RPP has had, I think, 13 or 14 seats in the parliament, right? So they are certainly a stakeholder. I don't know how this is going to unravel in terms of how that particular aspiration is going to be accommodated. But all I can say is they're definitely a stakeholder, just like the other forces, other parties like the Nepali Congress, the UML, the Maoists, the Madesi forces. So, amongst these all disparate forces, the monarchists are also a force to be reckoned with. They are also a stakeholder in this larger equation.
All right. It's a big decision time for Nepal. The future of Nepal is currently being decided as we speak. Mr. Thapa, thank you so much for your time and for your insights. It's still early days to figure out which direction Nepal is heading in. There are divergent views, but many stakeholders, and all of them interested in the best and for the future of Nepal. For such insightful discussions, keep watching Strat News Global and make sure you like and subscribe as well.